The crystal champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched my mother fawn over my brother for the 1,000th time. "To Quentin," she beamed, "the most successful entrepreneur this family has ever produced. I'm Zella, and I was standing in my parents' lavishly decorated living room, surrounded by family members who'd gathered to celebrate my brother's latest business venture. The same week, I'd received my Ph.D. in psychology after 8 years of grueling work. Not that anyone here seemed to care. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I actually have some news too." "Oh, honey, just a minute," she cut me off, rushing to adjust Quentin's tie for the photos. "Dwayne, come stand next to your son. Warren, would you mind taking the picture?" My father proudly clasped Quentin's shoulder. "That's my boy. Showing everyone how it's done in the real world, aren't you?" I knocked back the rest of my champagne, catching my best friend Kira's sympathetic glance from across the room. She mouthed, "You okay?" And I gave her a tight smile. "Did you hear about the new contract?" Quentin's voice boomed across the room. $20 million in projected revenue, the biggest deal Morrison Enterprises has ever landed. More applause, more congratulations. I slipped into the kitchen, needing a moment alone, but my cousin Beatrice followed me in. "I heard about your Ph.D., she said quietly. "That's incredible, Zella. I can't believe no one's mentioned it." "Thanks, Bea." I started loading dishes into the dishwasher, keeping my hands busy. 8 years of research, teaching, and writing. But hey, what's that compared to another business deal, right? "It's not fair," she said, helping me with the glasses. "You know, you're the reason I decided to go back to school. Seeing you pursue your dreams despite—" The kitchen door burst open. My mother rushed in, looking flustered. "Zella, where are those petit fours I asked you to arrange? Everyone's waiting." "Mom, I actually wanted to tell you about—" "Not now, sweetie. Your brother's about to give a speech about his new venture. Come on, both of you." Back in the living room, Quentin stood in the center, commanding attention like always. I positioned myself near the back next to Kira, who squeezed my hand. "The Morrison name has always stood for excellence," Quentin began, raising his glass. "And today, I'm proud to announce—" His phone rang, cutting through his speech. He glanced at the screen and I watched as all the color drained from his face. "Excuse me," he muttered, stepping away. Through the window, I could see him pacing on the patio, gesturing frantically. "Everything okay?" our father called out. Quentin burst back in, his perfectly tailored suit suddenly seeming too tight. "I have to go," he announced, grabbing his keys. "Emergency at the office." "But son, the celebration?" Dad started. "I said I have to go," Quentin shouted, making everyone jump. He stormed out, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Warren, my parents' longtime friend, cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should all call it a night." As guests began filtering out, I overheard my mother whisper to my father, "Dwayne, did you see his face? Something's wrong." "I'm sure it's nothing," Dad replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "He's handled bigger crises before." I gathered my things, ready to escape when my mother finally noticed me. "Oh, Zella, be a dear and help clean up before you go." "Actually, Mom, I've been trying to tell you all evening. I successfully defended my dissertation last week. I'm officially Dr. Morrison now." She blinked, then patted my cheek absently. "That's nice, honey. But right now, I'm worried about your brother. Could you check on him tomorrow?" I stood there watching them huddle together, discussing Quentin's abrupt departure, my achievement already forgotten. Kira appeared at my side, car keys in hand. "Come on, Dr. Morrison," she said loudly enough for my parents to hear. "I'm taking you out for a proper celebration." As we walked out, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the hallway mirror, shoulders squared, head high, despite the familiar ache in my chest. Something about Quentin's exit felt different this time, like a shift in the air before a storm. I didn't know it then, but that night would mark the beginning of a change none of us saw coming. Sometimes karma takes its time, but when it arrives with a vengeance. 3 days after the disastrous family gathering, my office phone rang. I was grading papers when my mother's number flashed across the screen. "Zella, are you sitting down?" Her voice trembled. "It's about Quentin." I set down my red pen. "What happened?" Everything's gone. The company, it's bankrupt. He took risks. Massive risks. The investors are threatening legal action. She broke into sobs. Your father's beside himself. The news shouldn't have given me satisfaction, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't. Where's Quentin now? He's not answering our calls. Your father and we need help. Of course they did. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the psychology degrees hanging on my wall. What kind of help, Mom? Financial, she whispered, as if the word itself was shameful. We put everything into his business. Our retirement fund, the house equity. Everything. I gripped my desk. Are you telling me you mortgaged the house to fund his ventures? He promised it was foolproof, she defended. He showed us the projections, the plans. A knock at my office door interrupted us. My colleague wanted to remind me about the department meeting, but I waved her away. How much? I asked. The number she quoted made me glad I was sitting down. We wouldn't ask, she added quickly, but you're the only one with a stable, what do you call it, academic position? Tenure-track professorship, Mom. I'm a university lecturer with a Ph.D. Remember, the achievement you couldn't spare 5 minutes to acknowledge last week? Silence stretched between us. Then, Zella, please. We're desperate. I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. 12-year-old me winning the state science fair, only to have my parents skip the ceremony for Quentin's football game. 16-year-old me earning a full academic scholarship, overshadowed by Quentin's first business venture. 25-year-old me completing my master's degree while my parents bragged about Quentin's new office building. I'll think about it, I said finally. But I said I'll think about it. I hung up and immediately called Kira. 20 minutes later, we sat in the campus cafe, my untouched coffee growing cold. They're finally reaping what they sowed, Kira said, stirring her tea. You don't owe them anything. I know, but... I watched students hurrying past outside. They're still my parents. Parents who never supported your dreams, who dismissed your achievements, who now need my help. I smiled grimly. Ironic, isn't it? My phone buzzed. A text from Warren. Heard about Quentin. Board meeting records show he falsified projections. This is bigger than bankruptcy. Oh, God, I muttered, showing Kira the message. She read it and looked up, her lawyer instincts kicking in. This could mean criminal charges. Another text came through, this time from Beatrice. Just heard the news. Are you okay? Can we talk? I texted back, suggesting dinner tonight. Then I turned to Kira, an idea forming. What if... I began slowly. What if I could use this situation to change things? Really change things? Kira leaned forward. I'm listening. They want my help? Fine. But this time, it comes with conditions. I pulled out my notebook, the one I usually used for lecture notes. They've spent years dismissing me, dismissing my choices. Maybe it's time for a public acknowledgement. What are you thinking? A family reunion. A big one. Where they'll have to stand up in front of everyone and admit how wrong they've been. I started writing rapidly. They'll have to acknowledge my achievements, their favoritism, everything. That's actually brilliant, Kira grinned. Brutal but brilliant. I'll help them, but only after they've learned their lesson. After they understand what it feels like to be truly seen. My phone rang again. Dad this time. I let it go to voicemail. Are you sure about this? Kira asked. It could backfire. I thought about my students, especially the young women who came to my office hours seeking advice about pursuing their dreams despite family pressure. I thought about Beatrice, inspired to return to school because of my example. I'm sure, I said, my voice stronger than I'd expected. It's time they understood that success isn't just about profit margins and business deals. It's about persistence, dedication, and staying true to yourself, despite everyone telling you you're wrong. I picked up my phone to call my mother back, my hand steady this time. The plan was taking shape in my mind, clear and sharp as crystal. They wanted my help. They'd get it, but on my terms. This time, I would write the rules of engagement. A family reunion, My mother's voice crackled through the speakerphone. Zella, we need help now, not a party. I sat at my dining room table, surrounded by my support system, Kira, Warren, and Beatrice. It's not just a party, Mom. It's my condition for helping you. I don't understand. Let me be clear, I said, drawing strength from Kira's encouraging nod. I'll help with the financial situation, but first, you and Dad will host a family reunion. During it, you'll both publicly acknowledge your favoritism toward Quentin and your dismissal of my achievements. The silence that followed was deafening. You can't be serious, Dad's voice cut in. They must have been on speakerphone too. This is blackmail. No, this is accountability. I kept my voice steady. You want my help? These are my terms. But what about your brother? Mom pleaded. This would humiliate him. Quentin humiliated himself, Warren spoke up. And from what I've seen of the company records, he's lucky if embarrassment is all he faces. Warren, Mum sounded betrayed. You're part of this? I've watched for years as you dismissed your daughter's incredible achievements, he replied. Maybe it's time for some honest reflection. Beatrice leaned toward the phone. Aunt Sophia, Uncle Dwayne, Zella's inspired so many of us. Do you know she's the reason I went back to college? While you were busy praising Quentin's latest scheme, your daughter was quietly changing lives. We never meant to. Mum's voice wavered. To what? I pressed. To make me feel worthless? To treat my Ph.D. like a hobby? To dismiss 20 years of hard work? That's not fair, Dad protested weakly. No, what's not fair is mortgaging your future on Quentin's empty promises while treating me like an afterthought. But I'm offering you a chance to make it right. Kira slid a legal pad across the table. She'd already drafted a basic agreement. Always the prepared lawyer. The reunion will be in 2 weeks, I continued. I'll handle the arrangements. All you have to do is show up and tell the truth. 2 weeks? Mom gasped. That's too soon. Your creditors won't wait much longer than that, Warren reminded them gently. The silence stretched again. I could almost see them exchanging looks, weighing their options. What exactly would we need to say? Dad finally asked. The truth. About how you've treated me compared to Quentin. About dismissing my academic achievements. About the constant favoritism. In front of everyone. Mum's voice was small. In front of everyone. Beatrice squeezed my hand under the table as we waited for their response. And if we do this, Dad said slowly, you'll help us? Yes. I'll help restructure your debt and set up a payment plan, but only after the reunion. More silence. Then Mom cleared her throat. We'll do it. After ending the call, I slumped in my chair, emotionally drained. Kira immediately poured wine for everyone. You did it, she said, raising her glass. I'm so proud of you. They actually agreed, Beatrice marveled. I never thought. They're desperate, Warren reminded us, but that doesn't make this any less significant. My phone buzzed, a text from Quentin. Mum told me what you're doing, we need to talk. He finally surfaces, Kira muttered, reading over my shoulder. I typed back, tomorrow, my office, 2 p.m. Are you sure you want to meet him alone? Beatrice asked. He's not in a position to make demands anymore. I took a long sip of wine. Besides, it's time for some sibling honesty too. Warren checked his watch and stood. I should go. But Zella? What you're doing? It's not just about your parents. You're setting an example for every woman who's been told her achievements don't matter. After everyone left, I sat alone in my living room, staring at the family photo from years ago. We were all smiling, but I remembered what happened right after, Mom fussing over Quentin's hair while I stood awkwardly to the side. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Dr. Morrison, I'm in your Psychology of Family Dynamics class. Your lecture today about standing up to toxic family patterns really helped me. I finally told my parents I'm switching my major to what I actually want to study. Thank you. I smiled, saving the message. Tomorrow would bring confrontation with Quentin, and the reunion would undoubtedly be dramatic. But tonight's message reminded me why this mattered. Sometimes the biggest acts of courage inspire the smallest acts of bravery in others. And that made everything worth it. Quentin arrived at my office looking nothing like the polished entrepreneur from the family gathering. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, and his usual confident stride replaced by an uncertain shuffle. "You look terrible," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "Yeah, well, bankruptcy and potential criminal charges will do that to you." He slumped into the seat. "What are you trying to prove with this reunion stunt?" I folded my hands on my desk. "It's not a stunt. It's a reckoning. Come on, Zella. They're our parents. Exactly our parents, not just yours." I pulled out a faded photograph from my desk drawer. "Remember this? My high school graduation. You weren't there because you had a crucial business meeting. Mum and Dad left halfway through to help you set up your first office." He shifted uncomfortably. "That was years ago. Last week I got my Ph.D, and they couldn't spare 5 minutes to acknowledge it. Nothing's changed, Quentin." A student walked past my office doing a double take at seeing the famous Quentin looking so disheveled. He quickly shut my door. "You don't understand what I'm dealing with right now," he said, voice low. "The investors are out for blood. The SEC is investigating. And whose fault is that? You falsified projections, took ridiculous risks, and dragged our parents down with you." He slammed his fist on my desk. "I was trying to keep the business alive. By committing fraud?" I kept my voice steady. "Warren showed me the board meeting records." Quentin's face paled. "Warren needs to mind his own business. Mom and Dad's retirement fund was your business. Their house was your business. You made it everyone's business." He ran his hands through his unkempt hair. "So this is revenge? Make them humiliate themselves in front of the whole family to punish me? No." I stood up, walking to my window. "This is about truth, about consequences, about years of them treating your mistakes as more valuable than my achievements. You're going to destroy them. They destroyed themselves when they put all their eggs in your basket without even looking at mine." I turned back to face him. "Did you know Beatrice went back to school because of me? That my students write to me about finding courage to pursue their dreams?" "That's different." "Why? Because it doesn't come with a profit margin? Because it doesn't fit their definition of success?" A knock at my door interrupted us. My department head poked her head in. "Dr. Morrison, sorry to interrupt, but your guest lecture starts in 15 minutes. "Thank you," I smiled. "I'll be right there." After she left, Quentin stood up. "You've made your point, but this reunion, it's cruel. Cruel was watching them drain their savings for your ventures while telling me my education was a waste of time. Cruel was sitting through countless family dinners hearing about your latest deal while they ignored my publications and research." "They love you," he protested weakly. "They love you more, and now they're going to admit it." I gathered my lecture materials. "The reunion is happening, Quentin. Be there or don't, for once you're not the center of attention." He moved to the door, then paused. "You know what's ironic? All those years I was jealous of you." I nearly dropped my books. "What?" "You knew exactly what you wanted, worked for it, built something real." He laughed bitterly. "I just kept chasing bigger deals, trying to live up to their expectations. Look where that got me." Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me standing in my office with those words echoing in my head. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. The invitations arrived. "Are you sure about this?" Another from Beatrice. "Just got the reunion invite. You're so brave. I'm with you all the way." And one from Warren. "SEC called. They want to interview your parents about their investments in Quentin's company. Timing couldn't be worse. Or better." I walked to my lecture hall thinking about Quentin's confession. All those years of feeling less than, and he had been jealous of me. The thought almost made me laugh. But as I set up my presentation on family dynamics and psychological validation, I realized something. This reunion wasn't just about making my parents admit their favoritism, it was about breaking a cycle, about showing everyone, my parents, my students, Beatrice, even Quentin, that success isn't measured by dollar signs. My phone buzzed one more time. Kira. Ready for tomorrow's reunion planning? Got some ideas that'll make sure your parents can't wiggle out of this? I smiled, typing back. More ready than they'll ever be. The truth was coming, whether they were ready or not. The reunion venue buzzed with nervous energy as family members filed in. I stood near the entrance, greeting everyone while keeping one eye on my parents, who huddled in a corner looking like they were attending a funeral rather than a family gathering. Quite a turnout, Kira whispered, appearing at my side. I count at least 50 people. 50 witnesses, I corrected quietly. Aunt Margaret bustled over, pulling me into a tight hug. Zella, darling, I heard you're a doctor now. A real doctor. Why didn't your mother tell us? I caught Mum's flinch from across the room. Maybe you should ask her that question, Aunt Margaret. The elderly woman frowned, but before she could respond, Warren appeared with a glass of water for me. Your father's looking a bit pale. Should we move up the speeches? Let them sweat a little longer, I said, watching Dad loosen his collar for the third time in 10 minutes. Beatrice approached with her parents. Uncle Dwayne and Aunt Sophia seem tense, she observed. Have they practiced what they're going to say? That wasn't part of the deal. Whatever they say has to be genuine. The room grew more crowded. Second cousins I hadn't seen in years. Family friends, even my old high school teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who'd always encouraged my academic pursuits when my parents wouldn't. Is Quentin coming? Someone asked loudly. Mum's head snapped up, hope flashing across her face, but I knew better. He'd texted earlier. Can't watch this train wreck, sorry sis. Warren clinked his glass, calling for attention. If everyone could take their seats, we have some special presentations planned. I watched my parents reluctantly make their way to the front row. Mum's hands trembled as she smoothed her skirt. Dad's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. First, Warren continued, I'd like to acknowledge our host, Dr. Zella Morrison, whose recent achievement of earning her Ph.D. in psychology is just one of many accomplishments we're celebrating today. Applause filled the room. Several relatives looked confused, clearly hearing this news for the first time. And now, Warren gestured to my parents, Sophia and Dwayne would like to say a few words. Mom stood up first, her legs shaking. She reached the podium and gripped it like a lifeline. Her voice cracked. The room went silent. I could hear someone's watch ticking. I don't know how to start, she whispered. Try the truth, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the quiet room. She looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. The truth is, I've been a terrible mother to Zella. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. She glanced at Dad, who had gone completely white. We always favoured Quentin. We dismissed Zella's dreams, her hard work, her brilliant mind. We were so focused on what we thought success should look like that we failed to see the incredible daughter right in front of us. Aunt Margaret made a disapproving sound. Someone whispered, I knew it. Dwayne, Mum turned to my father, you need to speak too. Dad stood slowly, like each movement caused him pain. He didn't go to the podium, instead turning to face me directly. I was wrong, he said, his voice rough. I was so wrong, Zella. Every time you achieved something remarkable, I downplayed it. Every time you reached higher, I questioned why. And now, he spread his hands helplessly, now you're the successful one, the stable one, the one we turn to for help. The irony isn't lost on me. And Quentin, I prompted. Tell them about Quentin. Mom's sob cut through the room. We gave him everything, every penny we had, because we believed in him more than we believed in you. And now you're facing bankruptcy, I finished for her, because you bet everything on the wrong child. The silence that followed was absolute. I could feel every eye in the room darting between us, processing this public confession. Suddenly, the back door burst open. Everyone turned to see a man in a dark suit stride in, holding up a badge. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, he announced. I'm with the Securities and Exchange Commission. We need to ask you some questions about your investments in your son's company. Mom swayed on her feet. Dad reached for her, but she was already crumpling toward the floor. "Mom!" I rushed forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Despite everything, she was still my mother. As chaos erupted around us, with relatives jumping up and the SEC agent approaching, I held my unconscious mother and looked at my father's devastated face. This wasn't how I'd planned the revelation to end. But then again, karma has its own schedule. "She's coming around," I said, fanning my mother's face with a program from the reunion. We'd moved her to a private room adjacent to the main hall, away from the prying eyes of relatives. Mum's eyelids fluttered open. "The SEC," she whispered. "Is waiting outside," Kira finished, her lawyer mode activated. "And as your daughter's best friend who happens to be an attorney, I strongly advise you not to speak to them without legal representation." Dad paced the small room. "This is a nightmare. A complete nightmare." A knock at the door made us all jump. Warren stepped in, closing it quickly behind him. "The agents are willing to schedule the interview for tomorrow morning. I've convinced them that today isn't optimal." "Thank you," I said, still holding my mother's hand. Despite everything, her fingers clutched mine like a lifeline. "Zella," Mom's voice was barely audible. "I'm so sorry. Not just because we need help now, but truly sorry. Watching you catch me just now. After everything we've done. Mom." "No, let me finish." She struggled to sit up. "Your father and I, we were so wrong, so terribly wrong. For years we measured success in dollars and deals, but look at you." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You've built something real, something lasting. While we were chasing Quentin's empty promises, you were quietly changing lives." Dad stopped pacing. "The things that teacher said out there, before, about how you inspired her students to pursue higher education. Mrs. Patterson," I supplied. "Yes, she said you'd helped dozens of first-generation college students believe in themselves." He rubbed his face. "While we were ignoring you, you were helping others fight the same battle you fought with us." Another knock. Beatrice poked her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone else here to see you all." Quentin stepped into the room. "Son!" Mom tried to stand, but I gently pushed her back down. My brother looked worse than when I'd seen him in my office. His eyes were red-rimmed, his expensive watch conspicuously missing. "I heard what happened," he said. "Came as fast as I could." He turned to our parents. "The SEC investigation. It's my fault. All of it. The falsified projections, the cooked books. I did it all." "We know," Dad said quietly. "You knew." Quentin's eyes widened. "We suspected," Mom admitted. "But we wanted so badly to believe in you that we ignored the signs. Just like we ignored Zella's achievements because they didn't fit our narrow view of success." "I have to turn myself in," Quentin announced. "It's the only way to possibly reduce any charges against you both as investors." The room fell silent. I watched my brother, the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong, finally taking responsibility. "There's something else," he continued, pulling out his phone. "I recorded a confession. About everything. The fraud, the fake projections, how I pressured you both to invest. I'm sending copies to the SEC and the prosecutor's office." "Quentin, no," Mom started. "Yes, Mom. For once in my life, I'm going to do the right thing." He looked at me. "Zella, I know it's too late, but I'm proud of you. You're the strongest person I know." Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them back. "It's not too late for honesty, Quentin. It's never too late." Warren cleared his throat. "The guests are waiting. They'll want to know what's happening." "I'll tell them," I said, standing. "No," Mom grabbed my hand. "We'll tell them. Your father and I, the whole truth this time, about our favoritism, about Quentin's business, about how we failed you. No more hiding." Dad nodded. "We owe you that much. And more." As they prepared to face the crowd again, Kira pulled me aside. "Are you okay?" I watched my family, my broken, flawed, finally honest family, gathering their courage. "I think I will be. This isn't how I planned it, but maybe it's better. Real change doesn't come from carefully scripted confessions." "Dr. Morrison?" Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway. Your cousin Beatrice is out here telling everyone how you inspired her to go back to school. There are others who want to share similar stories. I smiled. Tell them to wait. My parents have something to say first. As we filed back into the main hall, I caught sight of my degrees hanging on the wall at home in my mind's eye. They weren't just pieces of paper anymore. They were proof that sometimes the greatest success comes from staying true to yourself, even when those who should believe in you don't. And sometimes, just sometimes, they finally learn to believe. The next morning, I sat in Kira's law office watching my parents sign paperwork for their legal representation. The SEC interview was scheduled for 2 hours from now. Just remember, Kira explained, sliding another document across her desk. Stick to the facts. Quentin's confession helps your case, but we need to establish that you were victims of his fraud, not willing participants. Mum's hand shook as she signed. Will they arrest him? Most likely, Kira said gently. But his cooperation will work in his favor. A knock at the door interrupted us. Warren entered, holding a stack of financial documents. I've gone through everything. The good news is there's a clear paper trail showing Quentin acted alone in falsifying the projections. And the bad news? Dad asked. You're still looking at significant financial losses. The house, the retirement accounts. I cleared my throat. That's where I come in. Everyone turned to look at me. I've spoken with my bank. I can take out a loan against my tenure position. It won't cover everything, but it'll keep you from losing the house. Zella. No, Mum protested. After everything we've done. I'm not doing it for free, I interrupted. I have conditions. Dad straightened in his chair. Name them. First, you'll both attend therapy, regular sessions to work through your favoritism issues and repair our relationship. They nodded. Second, you'll start attending my guest lectures at the university. I want you to really understand what I do, not just dismiss it as playing teacher. Of course, Mum whispered. And third, I pulled out a brochure from my bag. There's a mentorship program I run for first-generation college students. Many of them face the same biases I did from their families. You're going to help me expand it. Help you? Dad looked confused. By sharing your story. About how you learned the hard way that success isn't just about profit margins. About how you almost lost everything by betting on the wrong dreams. Before they could respond, Beatrice burst into the office out of breath. Turn on the news! Quick! Warren grabbed the remote, flicking on Kira's office TV. There was Quentin being led out of the FBI building in handcuffs. The headline scrolled beneath, Local entrepreneur surrenders to authorities, confesses to investment fraud. Oh, God! Mum covered her face. But wait! Beatrice pointed. Look who's with him. The camera panned to show Quentin's lawyer speaking to reporters. My client has taken full responsibility for his actions and is cooperating fully with authorities. He wants to make it clear that his investors, including his parents, were victims of his deception. He really did it, Dad murmured. He's protecting us. Maybe he learned something too, I said quietly. My phone buzzed. A message from Mrs. Patterson. Your story has gone viral in our education circles. 3 students just changed their majors to follow their real passions instead of their parents' expectations. You're starting a movement, Dr. Morrison. Kira checked her watch. We should head to the SEC office. Are you coming, Zella? Actually, I stood up, gathering my things. I have a class to teach. Family dynamics and personal growth. Seems pretty relevant today. Mom caught my hand before I could leave. We'll make this right, Zella. Not just the money, but everything. We're finally seeing you, really seeing you. I know, Mom. I squeezed her hand. That's why I'm helping, because growth is possible even after decades of getting it wrong. As I walked across campus to my lecture hall, my phone kept buzzing with messages. Relatives expressing support, former students sharing their own stories of standing up to family pressure, even a message from Quentin's holding cell. Teaching them the hardest lesson was your greatest achievement, sis. I stepped into my classroom, where eager faces looked up at me. Today's topic felt different, personal, real. Good morning, I began, writing on the board. When family dynamics shift, the power of truth and consequences. A student raised her hand. Dr. Morrison, we saw the news about your brother, and we heard about what happened at your family reunion. Would you share your story with us? I looked at their faces. Young people struggling with their own family expectations and pressures, each one carrying their own dreams that might not match their parents' visions. Yes, I said, setting down my notes, because sometimes the most important lessons come from our hardest moments. And sometimes the greatest act of love is holding people accountable for their mistakes. The room fell silent, ready to learn from a story that was still unfolding, but finally moving in the right direction. The autumn breeze rustled through campus as I walked with my mother toward the university auditorium. She clutched a program in her hands, reading it for the 10th time. Breaking Family Patterns, a discussion on academic achievement and parental expectations, she recited. I still can't believe you invited me to be a speaker. That's the point, Mom. Your perspective matters. Inside, the auditorium was packed. Faculty members, students, parents, and even some familiar faces from our family reunion filled the seats. Beatrice waved from the front row, sitting next to Warren and Kira. Ready? I asked Mom as we headed backstage. She smoothed her blouse nervously. What if they judge me? What if... They will, I said honestly, but they'll also learn from you. Dad was already waiting backstage, adjusting his tie. After 3 months of therapy sessions and attending my lectures, he looked different, lighter somehow. Your brother called, he said. Wanted to wish us luck. The house lights dimmed. I stepped out to the podium facing the crowd. Welcome, everyone. Today's symposium is about more than academic achievement. It's about understanding how family expectations shape us, break us, and sometimes, if we're brave enough, rebuild us. I gestured to my parents. Please welcome my mother, Sophia, and my father, Dwayne. 3 months ago, they stood before our family and admitted to years of favoritism and dismissing my academic achievements. Today, they're here to share what they've learned. Mom approached the microphone, her hands steady now. I used to think success had a specific look, business suits, profit margins, things you could count. I pushed those expectations onto my children, celebrating one while dismissing the other. But sitting in my daughter's lectures these past months, watching her change lives, she turned to me, tears in her eyes. I saw real success. Not in bank accounts, but in the faces of students who found courage through her story. In the letters from parents who learned to listen to their children's dreams. Dad stepped forward. We lost our retirement fund, nearly lost our house, backing what we thought was success. Meanwhile, our daughter built something priceless, a legacy of change and understanding. From the audience, a young woman stood up. Dr. Morrison's story gave me courage to tell my parents I'm switching from business to education. They're here today too. Another student rose. Her family dynamics research helped me understand my own parents' expectations. We're finally talking honestly. More people stood, sharing similar stories. Mum gripped the podium, overwhelmed by the impact of our family's journey. Beatrice joined us on stage, holding up her recently acquired master's degree acceptance letter. This is what happens when we break the cycle, when we redefine success. I watched my parents beam with genuine pride, not for the first time, but perhaps the most meaningful time. The mentorship program you helped expand, I told them, has tripled in size. Every story shared helps another family avoid our mistakes. And Quentin, someone asked from the audience, is serving his sentence, Dad answered, but he's teaching financial ethics to fellow inmates, finding his own way to make amends. After the symposium, as we gathered our things, Mom pulled me into a tight hug. I always thought I was teaching you about success, she whispered, but you taught me instead. We taught each other, I corrected. That's what families should do. Kira approached with a stack of business cards. 5 different universities want you to bring this symposium to their campuses. Your story is opening doors everywhere. Our story, I said, looking at my parents, because it's not just about what went wrong. It's about how we made it right. Dad checked his watch. We should head out. Got our therapy session in an hour. Actually, Mom said, I thought we might stop by that little cafe near your office first, Zella. I'd love to hear more about your new research project. I smiled, remembering all the times they'd brushed off my work. The change wasn't perfect. Healing rarely is. But it was real. As we walked across campus, a student ran up to us. Dr. Morrison, that quote you shared in class about success being measured in lives changed, not dollars earned. I told it to my dad. He finally agreed to let me study art therapy. Mom squeezed my hand. You see, that's the real family business, changing lives one truth at a time. Looking at them, my imperfect, growing, trying parents, I felt something settle in my heart. We'd never be the perfect family, but maybe that was the point. Sometimes the broken pieces, when honest about their cracks, fit together to create something stronger than before. And that was a success worth measuring.
My name's Anna, I just turned 27, and I was about to marry Jake, my college sweetheart. Everything was going smoothly until my mom called out of the blue. Anna, sweetie. Her voice was way too chipper. What kind of suit do you think Tom should wear when he walks you down the aisle? I nearly choked on my coffee. Tom was her latest conquest. Some younger guy I'd seen maybe twice or thrice. Mom, what are you talking about? Grandpa's walking me down the aisle. There was a long pause. Then she exploded. What? You can't do that to me, Anna. Tom needs to practice being a father. He has a teenage daughter, you know. He needs to know how it feels to walk his little girl down the aisle. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, I'm not his little girl. I'm not even related to him. Don't be so selfish, Anna. This is important for our relationship. That's when I lost it. I'm not going to be your boyfriend's guinea pig. Let him practice at someone else's wedding. I hung up and ignored her calls after that. But as I sat there, fuming, memories started flooding back. Memories I'd tried hard to forget. Dad died when I was 10. After that, Mom went off the deep end with men. She worked for a trucking company, and our house became a revolving door for every Tom, Dick, and Harry passing through town. Anna, meet your new daddy, she'd say, hanging off some scruffy guy's arm. A week later, he'd be gone, replaced by the next one and only. I hated it. The parade of men, the constant drama, the instability. Mom was obsessed, throwing herself at these guys like her life depended on it. And each time they left, which they always did, she'd be a wreck until the next one came along. One time, I came home from school to find Mom sobbing on the couch. He was supposed to be the one, she wailed. We were gonna get married. Who, Mom? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Bill. You remember Bill, don't you? He said he loved me. I didn't have the heart to tell her I couldn't keep track of all the Bills and Toms and Joes that had passed through our lives. It's okay, Mom, I said, patting her back awkwardly. There'll be someone else. And there always was. Within a week, she was all smiles again, introducing me to yet another perfect man. As I sat there, remembering all this, my phone buzzed again. Mom, for the 10th time. I hit ignore and tossed the phone aside. Some things never change, I thought bitterly. Here I was, about to start my own family, and Mom was still trying to use me in her desperate attempts at love. As the years went by, I found myself spending more and more time at my grandparents' place. It was a refuge from the chaos at home, a place where I could just be a kid without worrying about which strange man would be sitting at our breakfast table the next morning. I stopped bothering to learn their names. What was the point? They never stuck around long enough for it to matter. But there was one day I'll never forget, no matter how much I want to. I was 14, trudging home from another crappy day at school. All I wanted was to grab a snack and lock myself in my room. Instead, I walked into World War III. Mom was in the living room, screaming and pulling the hair of some woman I'd never seen before. The strange woman was giving as good as she got, shrieking like a banshee. "You husband-stealing whore," the woman yelled, taking a swing at Mom. Mom ducked and spat back, "He told me he was single. Don't blame me for your failed marriage." And there, lounging in Dad's old armchair, was Mom's latest boyfriend. He was watching the whole thing with a shit-eating grin on his face, like this was the best entertainment he'd had in years. I stood there, frozen, my backpack slipping off my shoulder. The boyfriend noticed me first. He winked and put a finger to his lips, like we were sharing some kind of secret. I bolted to my room and slammed the door. Later that night, I heard Mom crying as the boyfriend left with the other woman. Apparently, she was his wife. Mom cried all night. I didn't sleep a wink. A few more months passed. I hit 15, and suddenly Mom's parade of losers took on a new, creepy dimension. I'd catch them leering at me when Mom wasn't looking. It made my skin crawl. Then came the day that changed everything. I was in my room, trying to drown out the sound of Mom giggling with her latest soulmate on the phone. There was a knock at the front door, then voices raised in argument. Curious, I crept out to the hallway. There stood Grandpa and Grandma, looking madder than I'd ever seen them. Grandpa's voice was like steel. "This has to stop, Linda. You're bringing strange men into the house with a teenage girl here. It's not safe, and it's not right." Mom's face turned red. "You just don't want me to be happy. You've always tried to control my life." "That's not true and you know it," Grandma cut in. "We want you to be happy, but not at Anna's expense. Have you even thought about what kind of example you're setting for her?" "I'm a great mother," Mom shrieked. "Anna loves me." That's when Grandpa noticed me in the hallway. His expression softened for a moment, then hardened again as he turned back to Mom. "Linda, you're my daughter and I love you. But I love Anna too, and right now, she needs protection, even if it's from you." I stood there, frozen in the hallway, as Grandpa's words hung in the air. Then he turned to me, his eyes soft but determined. "Anna, go pack your things. You're coming to live with us." I didn't hesitate. "Okay, Grandpa," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I turned and practically ran to my room, my heart pounding. As I threw clothes into a duffel bag, I could hear Mom's weak protests from the living room. "You can't just take her. I'm her mother." Grandpa's voice was calm but firm. "Linda, think about it. It'll be easier for you to find a man without Anna around." There was a long pause, and then I heard Mom's voice, sounding almost relieved. "Well, I suppose you're right. Maybe it would be better for everyone." As we walked out the door, I glanced back at Mom. She was already on her phone, probably lining up her next date. She didn't even look up as I left. Living with my grandparents was like entering a whole new world. Suddenly, there was structure, stability, and genuine care in my daily life. Grandma always had breakfast ready in the morning, and we'd sit together, talking about my plans for the day. Grandpa would drive me to school, using the time to chat about my classes or just tell silly jokes to make me laugh. I still went to the same school, so that part of my life stayed constant. But everything else changed, for the better. I had a quiet place to do my homework, without worrying about what drama I'd walk into when I left my room. I started bringing friends over, something I'd never done at Mom's house. My grades improved, and I even joined the debate team. Grandma and Grandpa came to every debate competition, every school event. They were there, front and center, cheering me on. It was a kind of support I'd never experienced before. As for Mom, well, she faded into the background of my life. We talked on the phone sometimes, but the conversations were always short and superficial. Years passed this way. Before I knew it, I was putting on my cap and gown, ready to graduate high school. To my surprise, Mom showed up at the ceremony. She sat with my grandparents, looking uncomfortable and out of place. After I got my diploma, she gave me a quick hug. I'm proud of you, sweetie, she said, but her eyes were already darting around the crowd. Thanks, Mom, I replied, not knowing what else to say. Listen, I've got to run. I have a date with this amazing guy I met last week. You understand, right? And just like that, she was gone, leaving me standing there in my graduation gown, watching her hurry out of the auditorium. Thanks to my grandparents' generosity and support, I headed off to college with a spring in my step and hope in my heart. I decided to major in finance, joining the investment management program. That's where I met Jake. We started off as study buddies, cramming for exams and bitching about our hard-ass professors. Jake was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor that never failed to make me laugh. As the semesters flew by, our friendship deepened. It wasn't until our senior year that things changed. We were pulling an all-nighter for our portfolio management final when Jake looked at me, his eyes bleary from lack of sleep, and said, "You know, Anna, I think I'm in love with you." And just like that, we were a couple. It felt natural, like the logical next step in our relationship. By the time we graduated, we knew we wanted to spend our lives together. Now here we were, planning our wedding. It should have been the happiest time of my life, but Mom had to go and complicate things, as usual. I'd only met her latest boyfriend, Tom, a handful of times when I visited her. He was younger than her, probably in his late 30s, with a teenage daughter from his previous marriage. He seemed nice enough, I guess, but I couldn't for the life of me understand why Mom thought he should walk me down the aisle. After Mom's phone call, I knew I needed to talk to Grandpa. I drove over to my grandparents' house, the place that had been my true home for so long. Grandma greeted me with a hug and a plate of cookies. "What's wrong, sweetie? You look upset." I sighed, sinking into the familiar comfort of their couch. "It's Mom. She's got some crazy idea about her boyfriend walking me down the aisle at my wedding." Grandma and Grandpa exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. "What do you want to do, Anna?" Grandpa asked gently. I looked at him, this man who had been more of a father to me than anyone since Dad died. "I want you to walk me down the aisle, Grandpa. You're the one who's been there for me. You're the one who saved me." Grandpa's eyes got misty. He cleared his throat gruffly. "Well, if that's what you want, I'd be honored. But if you decide you want your mother's friend to do it, I'd understand that too." I shook my head firmly. "No, I don't need to choose. I made my choice a long time ago. It's you, Grandpa. It's always been you." Grandma came over and hugged us both. "Your mother isn't going to like this," she warned. I sighed. "I know, but it's my wedding. Don't I get a say?" Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Jake. I put him on speaker. "Hey babe, how'd it go with your grandparents?" I filled him in quickly. When I finished, there was a pause. "Jake, you still there?" "Yeah, I'm here," he said. "Look, Anna, you know I support you, right? Whatever you decide about this, I'm in your corner. If you want your grandpa to walk you down the aisle, then that's what should happen. Your mom, well, she'll just have to deal with it." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. This was why I loved Jake. He got it. He understood. "Thanks, Jake," I said softly. "I love you." "Love you too. See you tonight?" After I hung up, I looked at my grandparents. They were smiling at me, pride evident in their eyes. I thought I'd made myself clear, but Mom wasn't about to let it go that easily. My phone rang constantly over the next few days, always her number flashing on the screen. Finally, I answered, bracing myself for the storm. "Anna, you need to reconsider this," Mom said, not even bothering with a hello. "Tom really wants to walk you down the aisle. It would mean so much to him." I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling a headache coming on. "Mom, I've already told you. Grandpa is walking me down the aisle. End of story." "But Anna, you don't understand. This could really strengthen my relationship with Tom. He might get offended if I can't convince you. Don't you want me to be happy?" I lost it. Your boyfriend's whims are your problem, Mom. I'm busy planning my wedding. Please, just stop. There was a pause, then Mom's voice turned cold. Fine. If that's how you want to be, maybe I won't come to the wedding at all. The old me might have backpedaled, might have tried to smooth things over. But I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. You know what, Mom? If that's how you feel, then don't come. This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and I don't need your drama. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking with anger and something else, relief, maybe? A few days passed, and I started to relax. Maybe Mom had finally gotten the message. Maybe she'd cool off and we could talk things through like adults. I should have known better. I was at work, deep in a financial report, when my boss's assistant came to my desk. Anna, Mr. Thompson wants to see you in his office. Confused, I made my way to the corner office. As soon as I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. There, sitting across from my boss, were Mom and Tom. Mom's face was streaked with tears, her makeup a mess. As soon as she saw me, she let out a wail. Oh, Anna, how could you be so heartless? Refusing your own parents like this. I stood there, shell-shocked, as she pointed first to herself, then to Tom. She turned to my boss, her voice pitched for maximum dramatic effect. Mr. Thompson, please, you have to talk some sense into her. She's tearing this family apart. Mr. Thompson looked deeply uncomfortable, his eyes darting between Mom and me. Before I could say a word, Mom stood up, grabbed Tom's hand, and swept past me out of the office. As she passed, she shot me a look of pure triumph. As the door closed behind Mom and Tom, leaving me alone with Mr. Thompson, I felt like I might throw up. My face burned with embarrassment as my boss leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised. So, Anna, he said slowly, care to explain what that was all about? What's this about tearing apart the family? Reluctantly, I gave him a quick rundown of the situation, Mom's demand that her boyfriend walk me down the aisle, my refusal, and the resulting drama. As I talked, I could see his expression changing from confusion to understanding to, was that sympathy? When I finished, he let out a long whistle. Well, I'll be damned. You know, Anna, your mother reminds me a lot of my ex-wife. Sir? I said, not sure where this was going. He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, always making everything about her, no matter who got hurt in the process. That's why I divorced her, actually. Couldn't take the constant drama anymore. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. So, you understand? Oh, I understand all right, he said, nodding. And for what it's worth, I think you're handling this a hell of a lot better than I would have at your age. I almost sagged with relief. Thank you, sir. I really am sorry about all this. His face grew serious. That said, Anna, we can't have this kind of disturbance in the office. The company doesn't need that kind of drama, you know? I left his office in a daze, relief warring with anger. How dare Mom show up at my workplace like that? She could have seriously damaged my career. My first stop was the security desk. I explained the situation to Frank, the head of security, who'd always been kind to me. Don't you worry, Anna, he said, his weathered face creased with concern. I'll make sure they don't get in again. You just focus on that wedding of yours. Back at my desk, I opened my email. My hands were shaking as I typed, but I forced myself to keep going. Mom, I can't believe you showed up at my office today. You could have jeopardized my job with that stunt. I've tried to be understanding, but this is the last straw. I'm writing to inform you that you are no longer invited to my wedding. Your boyfriend is not invited either. Please do not try to contact me or show up at my workplace again. I need space from you and your drama. I hope someday you can understand why I'm doing this, but right now, I need to protect myself and my happiness. Anna. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then sat back, feeling drained but oddly liberated. The next day, I called Grandma and Grandpa to let them know what had happened. There was a long silence after I finished speaking. "Oh, sweetie," Grandma said finally, her voice thick with emotion. "You did the right thing. It's not easy, but sometimes we have to set boundaries, even with family." Grandpa's voice was gruff when he spoke. "We're proud of you, Anna. And we'll be there on your big day, no matter what." Over the next few weeks, Jake and I threw ourselves into wedding planning. We decided on a relatively small affair, about 50 people, just our closest friends and family. Every time I looked at the guest list, I felt a pang at Mom's absence. But then I remembered her behavior, her selfishness, and I knew I'd made the right choice. Jake's parents were wonderfully supportive through it all. His mom helped me pick out my dress, and his dad offered to handle the music for the reception. They never once mentioned the drama with my mom, but their quiet support meant the world to me. The big day had finally arrived. I stood just outside the church doors, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. Grandpa stood beside me, looking dapper in his tuxedo, his eyes misty with emotion. The wedding march began to play, and the door swung open. I could see Jake waiting for me at the altar, his face lighting up as he saw me. This was it. This was the moment I'd been dreaming of. We'd barely taken 2 steps when a commotion erupted behind us. I turned, my stomach dropping as I saw Mom and Tom pushing their way through the doors. "Stop!" Mom shrieked, her face red with anger. "This isn't right. Tom should be walking her down the aisle." I couldn't believe it. Even now, even here, she was trying to make this about her. "Mom," I hissed, "what are you doing? You're not invited." She ignored me, turning to Grandpa instead. "Step aside, old man. This isn't your place." I felt rage boiling up inside me. "How dare you," I spat. "How dare you try to ruin my wedding day because of your stupid whim? Get out." Mom's face crumpled, and the waterworks started. It was a performance I'd seen 1,000 times before. "Oh, Anna," she wailed, "how can you be so cruel? After everything I've done for you? I raised you all alone after your father died." I was about to respond when Grandpa stepped forward, his voice calm but steely. "That's enough, Linda. Everyone here knows your reputation. Everyone knows who really raised Anna. You need to leave. Now." Mom looked around, seemingly noticing the guests for the first time. Dozens of faces stared back at her, a mix of shock, disgust, and secondhand embarrassment clear in their expressions. No one was buying her act. Her face hardened, the fake tears disappearing in an instant. "Fine," she snarled. "If that's how you want it, Anna, then I'm done. I disown you. I have Tom now, a man who actually appreciates me. You've always been stupid and arrogant anyway." I felt like I'd been slapped, but before I could respond, Grandpa stepped forward again. "Well, Linda," he said, his voice cold, "if that's how you feel, then let me make something clear. You're out of my will. And you're out of my house. It's my property, and I want you gone by the end of the week." As Grandpa's words echoed through the church, I watched the color drain from Mom's face. She turned to Tom, clearly expecting his support, but his expression had completely changed. He glanced at Grandpa, then back at Mom. "Wait, did he just say you're out of his will? And kicked out of the house?" Mom nodded weakly, her eyes pleading. Tom's face hardened. "Well, in that case, we're done. I don't need you without money. I can find someone younger anyway." With that, Tom turned and walked out of the church, leaving Mom standing there in shock. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, Mom let out a wail that made my skin crawl. "You," she screamed, pointing at me. "This is all your fault. You've ruined everything." She lunged towards me, but Jake stepped in front of me protectively. At that moment, 2 police officers entered the church, likely called by one of the guests. "Ma'am," one of the officers said, approaching Mom, "we're going to need you to calm down and leave the premises." But Mom was beyond reason. She began to sob and scream, hurling insults at everyone as the officers gently but firmly escorted her out. Her screams echoed through the church even after the doors closed behind them. We took a 30-minute break to regroup. When we returned, the ceremony was beautiful. As Jake and I exchanged our vows, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This was right. This was how it was meant to be. The reception that followed was filled with love and support. Throughout the evening, guests approached us to offer their congratulations and support. Jake's parents came up to us, both of them misty-eyed. "Anna, dear," his mother said, "we want you to know that you're part of our family now. We love you, and we'll always be here for you." Even my boss, Mr. Thompson, pulled me aside. "You've got grit, kid," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "Don't ever let anyone tell you different." As the weeks passed, Jake and I settled into our new life together. We found a cozy apartment to rent near our workplaces. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, and we loved making it our home. Grandpa made good on his word and evicted Mom from his house. Jake and I decided to rent it out for some extra income. It felt good, turning something that had been a source of pain into something positive for our future. We didn't hear much from Mom after the wedding fiasco. According to neighborhood gossip, she was renting a small apartment across town and was back to her old habits, cycling through men in search of the one. Part of me felt sad for her, but a larger part felt relieved. For the first time in my life, I wasn't responsible for her happiness. I wasn't caught in the crossfire of her drama. One evening, about 6 months after the wedding, Jake and I were looking through our wedding album. We came to a photo of me and Grandpa walking down the aisle, both of us beaming. "You know," Jake said, squeezing my hand, "I'm really proud of you. The way you handled everything with your mom, you're amazing." I leaned into him, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "I couldn't have done it without you. Without all of you, your family, my grandparents. You guys are my real family." As I sat there, surrounded by love and support, I realized something. The day of my wedding hadn't gone as planned. It had been messy and dramatic and painful. But it had also been a turning point. It was the day I finally broke free from the cycle of manipulation and guilt that had defined my relationship with Mom for so long.
Hey there, I'm Brittany, and I've got a hell of a story to tell you. I'm 33, and up until recently, I was working as a cosmetologist at this fancy clinic downtown. It wasn't a bad gig, you know? Decent pay, nice clients, and I got to make people feel good about themselves. But I always had this itch, this dream of running my own show. Now, let me introduce you to the other main character in this clusterfuck of a story, my husband. Well, ex-husband now, but we'll get to that juicy bit later. Let's call him Jack. Jack's 5 years older than me and used to work as a manager at some big shot construction company. We'd been married for 3 years and were living in my apartment. "Babe, I'm telling you, opening your own place is the way to go," Jack would say, lounging on the couch with a beer in hand. "You'd be the boss, set your own hours. It's the dream, right?" I'd nod, excitement bubbling up inside me. "Yeah, you're right. But it's gonna take a lot of work and money to get there." Jack would wave his hand dismissively. "Don't worry about that. We'll figure it out. I'll support us while you get it off the ground. You focus on being a kick-ass business owner." So, I started saving. Every extra penny went into my business fund. No more fancy dinners, no new clothes, nothing. I was on a mission. "Geez, Britt, you don't have to be so strict," Jack would complain when I'd refuse to order takeout for the 3rd time in a week. "Every dollar counts, Jack," I'd reply, heating up some leftovers. "We agreed on this, remember?" He'd grumble but eventually nod. Yeah, you're right. It'll be worth it in the end." Now, I should probably mention that Jack had been married before. He told me he'd left his apartment to his ex-wife after their divorce. They'd been together for 5 years, and that was about all I knew. Whenever I tried to bring it up, he'd get all cagey. Months went by, and finally, I felt ready to take the plunge. I quit my job at the clinic, got my license, found the perfect little space, and started renovating. Every day was a whirlwind of decisions: what equipment to buy, how to decorate. Finally, after what felt like forever, I was ready to open. I worked my ass off, 7 days a week, from dawn till way past dusk. I barely saw Jack during those first few weeks. When I'd get home, he'd be asleep. When I left in the morning, he was still snoring away. One day, I was in the middle of a facial when my phone started buzzing like crazy. I ignored it at first. I'm a professional, after all. But when it wouldn't stop, I started to worry. What if something had happened to Jack? As soon as my client left, I checked my phone. 5 missed calls from my mother-in-law, Sandra. My stomach dropped. Sandra never called unless it was important. I called her back, my heart pounding. "Sandra, is everything okay?" "Brittany, thank goodness," she said, her voice shaky. "I've been trying to reach Jack all day. There's some kind of scandal at his work, and I can't get through to him. I'm worried sick." I felt like I'd been doused in cold water. "Scandal? What scandal? I don't know anything about a scandal, Sandra. Jack hasn't mentioned anything to me." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Oh," Sandra finally said. "I see. Well, if you hear from him, please ask him to call me." That night, I waited up for Jack. He stumbled in around midnight, reeking of beer. "Where have you been?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Your mom's been trying to reach you all day." "Something about a scandal at work?" Jack froze, then let out a long sigh. He slumped onto the couch, not meeting my eyes. "I guess I should have told you sooner. I quit my job about a month ago." I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. "A month? You've been unemployed for a month and you didn't think to mention it? What happened?" "I got into a fight with my boss," he said, his voice bitter. "He was being a complete asshole, and I couldn't take it anymore. My pride wouldn't let me stay." I took a deep breath, trying to process this bombshell. Here I was, working myself to the bone, and Jack had been sitting at home this whole time? "Why didn't you look for another job?" I asked. Jack looked at me then, his eyes pleading. "I think I'm burned out, Britt. I need a break. Maybe see a psychologist or something. I just can't face jumping into another job right now." Part of me wanted to scream at him. We had a plan, damn it. He was supposed to support us while I got the business off the ground. But looking at him sitting there, defeated and small, I couldn't bring myself to lay into him. "Okay," I said finally. "We'll figure this out. But no more secrets, Jack. We're supposed to be a team." He nodded, relief washing over his face. "I'm sorry, Britt. I promise, no more secrets." Little did I know, that was just the first of many promises he'd break. The next few weeks were tough. I started picking up extra shifts at my old clinic, working mornings at my office and afternoons at the clinic. It was exhausting, but what choice did I have? We had bills to pay, and I had a loan to repay for the office. Jack spent most of his time at home, supposedly looking for jobs online, but mostly playing video games. I tried to be supportive, reminding myself that mental health was important. But as the weeks turned into months, I started to wonder if he was really trying at all. Then, finally, a glimmer of hope. Jack came home one day, grinning from ear to ear. "I got a job," he announced. I was so relieved I could have cried. We celebrated that night with a bottle of wine, toasting to new beginnings. For a moment, it felt like everything was going to be okay. Jack's new job lasted all of a month. One day, I came home from a particularly grueling shift to find him sprawled on the couch, beer in hand, staring blankly at the TV. "You're home early," I said, a sinking feeling in my stomach. He shrugged, not taking his eyes off the screen. "Quit. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? Why? Boss was a moron, Jack muttered. Wanted me to be some kind of robot. All about discipline and following orders. Screw that noise. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. Jack, we talked about this. We can't afford for you to keep quitting jobs. He finally looked at me, his eyes hard. What, so I'm supposed to be miserable? I thought you'd be more understanding, Britt. I bit my tongue, not wanting to start a fight. But inside, I was seething. Understanding? I was working myself to the bone while he sat around drinking beer and playing video games. The next 6 months were a blur of work, stress, and mounting frustration. I'd come home to find Jack exactly where I'd left him, surrounded by empty beer cans and takeout containers. Any luck with the job search? I'd ask, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. Nothing good out there, he'd reply, waving his hand dismissively. I'm looking for something interesting, you know? With good pay but not too demanding. I wanted to scream. Who didn't want a job like that? But those jobs didn't just fall into your lap. You had to work for them. One night, after a particularly long day, I came home to find Jack actually up and about. He had this weird, excited look in his eyes. Britt, I've been thinking, he said, pulling me down onto the couch next to him. We should have a baby. I stared at him, sure I'd misheard. What? Yeah, think about it, he said, grinning. I could be a stay-at-home dad. You'd go to work, I'd take care of the kid. It's perfect. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jack, you've never even washed a dish in this apartment. How are you going to take care of a baby? His face fell. What, you don't think I could do it? It's not that, I said, trying to be diplomatic. It's just, taking care of a baby is a lot of work. And we're not exactly in a great financial position right now. You're being cruel, he said, his voice low. You don't understand my problems. I laughed, a short, harsh sound. Your problems? Jack, I'm working 7 days a week. I'm exhausted. And you want to add a baby to this mess? He stormed off, slamming the bedroom door behind him. I sat on the couch, my head in my hands, wondering how we'd gotten to this point. It started with the computer games. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone needs a hobby, right? But then I noticed our joint account was hemorrhaging money. Jack, I said one evening, my voice tight with frustration, did you buy another game? And, did you upgrade your computer? He didn't even look up from the screen. Yeah, so what? It's our money, isn't it? I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. We're supposed to be saving, remember? For our future? He paused the game and turned to me, his face a mask of innocence. Babe, it's an investment. In my leisure time, you know? Don't worry, I'll pay it all back when I get a job. That was the last straw. The next day, I closed our joint account and stopped giving Jack money altogether. If he wanted to act like a child, fine. But I wasn't going to be his personal ATM anymore. I thought that would be the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. The fights started almost immediately. Jack would stomp around the apartment, slamming doors and muttering under his breath. You don't respect me, he'd yell. You're trying to control me. I tried to reason with him. Jack, I'm just trying to keep us afloat. We can't keep spending money we don't have. He stormed off, leaving me standing in the kitchen, wondering how we'd gotten to this point. Days went by, and Jack didn't lift a finger around the apartment. Dishes piled up in the sink, laundry overflowed the hamper, and takeout containers littered every surface. I was working myself to the bone, and he couldn't even be bothered to run a vacuum. Then came the day that changed everything. I came home early from work, a migraine pounding behind my eyes. As I approached our apartment door, I heard Jack's voice drifting through the open window. Yeah, Mom, I need a new suit for this great new job, he was saying. Could you spot me some cash? I'll pay you back as soon as I get my first paycheck. I froze, my hand on the doorknob. New job? What new job? I burst into the apartment, startling Jack so badly he dropped his phone. What new job, Jack? I demanded. He stammered, trying to come up with a lie on the spot. But I'd caught him red-handed. You were going to take money from your parents? For a job that doesn't exist? I was shaking with anger. I was going to tell you, he mumbled. Tell me what? That you're a liar? That you'd rather scam your own parents than get off your ass and find a real job? The fight that followed was epic. We screamed, we cried, we said things we couldn't take back. In the end, Jack grabbed a bag and stormed out, saying he was going to stay with his parents for a while. As the door slammed behind him, I sank to the floor, my head in my hands. I was successful, I was driven, I had my own business. And yet here I was, married to a man who seemed determined to drag us both down. The days after Jack stormed out were weird. I kept expecting him to come crawling back, full of apologies and promises to do better. But as one day turned into 2, then 3, then a week, there was nothing. No calls, no texts, not even a lousy email. Part of me was relieved. The apartment was peaceful for once. No more walking on eggshells, no more cleaning up after a grown man who acted like a teenager. But another part of me was worried. What if something had happened to him? Just when I was starting to consider calling his parents, my phone rang. Jack's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my heart pounding. Jack? Where are you? Are you okay? His voice came through, loud and cheerful. Hey babe, guess where I am? Las Vegas. Can you believe it? Mom always wanted to come here, so we decided to make it a family trip. It's amazing. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Las Vegas? While I was here worrying about him? What do you mean, we decided? I asked, my voice tight. When did you decide this? Oh, you know, it was kind of spur of the moment, he said, his voice nonchalant. I told Mom and Dad about my great new job offer, and we thought, why not celebrate? I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. What job offer, Jack? We both know there isn't one. There was a pause, then Jack's voice came back, lower this time. Look, what they don't know won't hurt them, right? We're having a great time. I'll find a job when we get back, I promise. And how exactly are you paying for all this? I asked, dreading the answer. Oh, don't worry about that, he said, his voice bright again. I borrowed a couple of your credit cards. But don't freak out. I'll bring you back a magnet or something, okay? Have a great weekend. And then he hung up, just like that. I stood there, staring at my phone, feeling like my whole world was crumbling around me. This man, this person I had married, had stolen my credit cards to fund a vacation based on a lie. Something inside me snapped. I was done. No more second chances, no more excuses. With shaking hands, I opened my banking app and blocked every single one of my cards. Then I called a locksmith. I need my locks changed, I said. Today. As soon as possible. The locksmith came and went, and I was left alone in an apartment that suddenly felt too big, too empty. But I wasn't done yet. I grabbed my phone and made one more call. To a divorce lawyer. Sitting in the lawyer's office later that day, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness, anger, fear, but also relief. As I signed the divorce papers, I realized this was the first step towards taking back control of my life. I was just settling in for a quiet evening at home, the first in what felt like forever, when my phone started buzzing. Jack's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. Britt, thank God you picked up. Jack's voice was frantic. Something's wrong with the cards. They're not working. We can't pay for anything. I could hear the panic in his voice, but I felt oddly calm. That's because I blocked them, Jack. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. Then, you what? Why would you do that? Because they're my cards, Jack. I didn't give you permission to use them. But we're stranded here. Mom and Dad are freaking out. You have to unblock them. I could hear the desperation in his voice, but I stood my ground. No, I don't have to do anything. You got yourself into this mess, you can get yourself out. That's when he lost it. Are you kidding me? You're putting me in an impossible situation here. You're my wife, you're supposed to help me. Unblock the cards right now, or I swear to God, I'll divorce you. I burst out laughing then, a full belly laugh that felt like it was coming from someplace deep inside me that had been locked away for too long. Oh, Jack, I said, once I could speak again. You're a little late for that threat. And I hung up. The next day, I rented a storage unit and packed up all of Jack's things. Every shirt, every game console, every little knick-knack that reminded me of him, it all went into boxes and then into storage. I knew Jack would be coming home soon, probably expecting to waltz right back into our apartment like nothing had happened. Well, he was in for a surprise. Sure enough, a few days later, my phone rang again. Jack's voice was a mix of confusion and anger. Britt, what the hell? I can't get into the apartment. Did you change the locks? Yes, I did, I said calmly. Your things are in a storage unit. I'll text you the address and unit number. My things? What are you talking about? Let me in, Britt. This isn't funny. I took a deep breath. This was it. I'm not joking, Jack. I've filed for divorce. The papers should be arriving at your parents' house any day now. There was a long silence. Then, divorce? Britt, come on. You can't be serious. We can work this out. Let's start over, okay? I'll do better, I promise. It's over, Jack, I said firmly. I've made my decision. Please don't contact me again except through my lawyer. I hung up and blocked his number. As I sat there in my quiet apartment, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for what could have been. Anger at all the lies and betrayal. But mostly, I felt relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. A few days after I'd blocked Jack's number, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, thinking it might be Jack trying to reach me from another phone. But something made me pick up. Hello? I said cautiously. Brittany? It's Sandra, Jack's mother. My stomach clenched. Here it comes, I thought. The angry tirade about ruining their family vacation, about being a terrible wife, about not standing by my man. Sandra, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. I'm sorry about what happened in Las Vegas. But she cut me off. No, Brittany. I'm the one who should be apologizing. I'm so disappointed in Jack. I thought he had changed. What do you mean? I asked, my curiosity piqued. There was a long sigh on the other end of the line. Brittany, there's something you should know. Jack's first marriage, it didn't end because they grew apart, like he told you. His ex-wife left him because of his irresponsibility. His lying, his inability to hold down a job, his stealing. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. He never told me. I know, Sandra said softly. We hoped that living with you, seeing how hardworking and responsible you are, it would inspire him to change. To grow up. Her voice trailed off, and I could hear the pain in it. I felt a surge of sympathy for her. She'd been duped just as much as I had. Sandra, I'm so sorry, I said. I had no idea. No, Brittany. I'm sorry, she said firmly. I'm sorry we didn't tell you the whole truth from the beginning. I'm sorry we let you go through this. And I'm more sorry than I can say for what Jack has done to you. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. I want you to know, Sandra continued, that when we found out the truth, how he'd been lying to you for months, how he stole your credit cards, how he'd been deceiving us about having a job, we kicked him out. He's not welcome in our home right now. I was speechless. I'd been so worried about facing judgment from Jack's family, and here they were, standing by me instead. I don't blame you for divorcing him, Brittany, Sandra said. You deserve so much better. I hope you don't think badly of all of us because of Jack's actions. No, of course not, I said quickly. Sandra, I never blamed you or your husband. You've always been kind to me. We talked for a while longer, Sandra filling me in on some of the details I'd missed. By the time we hung up, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't alone in this. I wasn't crazy for feeling betrayed and angry. In the weeks following my conversation with Sandra, life started to settle into a new rhythm. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the familiar routines of my cosmetology office. Without Jack's constant drama and financial drain, I found myself with more energy, more focus, and, surprisingly, more money. But Jack wasn't going to let go without a fight. One evening, as I was locking up the office, I spotted a familiar figure leaning against my car. My heart sank. Britt, Jack called out as I approached. Can we talk, please? I've changed, I swear. I'm looking for a job, a real one this time. I'll pay you back every cent. Just give me another chance. For a split second, I felt a twinge of something. Nostalgia? Pity? But then I remembered all the lies, all the broken promises, all the stress and pain he'd put me through. No, I said firmly. I'm done giving you chances, Jack. Please leave. I brushed past him and got into my car, my hands shaking as I started the engine. As I drove away, I saw him in my rearview mirror, standing there looking lost. But I didn't turn back. That was the last time I saw Jack in person. He tried calling a few more times, from different numbers, but I blocked them all. Eventually, the divorce was finalized without any further drama. And you know what? Life got better. A lot better. Without the constant stress of Jack's unemployment and spending, my own finances improved dramatically. I was able to pour all my energy into my cosmetology office, and it showed. My client list grew, word of mouth spread, and soon I was busier than I'd ever been. I made the decision to leave my part-time job at the clinic and focus solely on my own business. It was scary at first, but it turned out to be the best decision I could have made. With the extra time and energy, I was able to really focus on marketing and expanding my services. I hired 2 more cosmetologists to help with the increased workload, and suddenly, I wasn't just a cosmetologist, I was a boss. The loan I'd taken out to start the business? Paid off, ahead of schedule. The constant worry about making ends meet? Gone. For the first time in years, I felt financially secure. But it wasn't just about the money. I started allowing myself little luxuries, weekend trips, nice dinners out, those shoes I'd been eyeing for months. Things I'd always denied myself before, thinking we needed to save every penny for some nebulous future that never seemed to arrive. Now, as I sit in my expanded office, looking at the plans for our new treatment room, I can't help but marvel at how much has changed. I'm not just surviving anymore, I'm thriving. And I did it all on my own. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't always easy. There were nights when I missed having someone to come home to, someone to share my successes with. But those moments became fewer and farther between as I built a life I truly loved. Looking back, I realized that ending my marriage to Jack wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning. It was the moment I chose myself, my dreams, my future. And you know what? I'd make that choice again in a heartbeat.
Hey there, I'm Chloe. I'm 28, and let me tell you, life's been a roller coaster lately. 3 weeks ago, I was on cloud 9, getting ready for my engagement to Tom. We've been together for 4 years, and he's the best thing that's ever happened to me. But then, out of nowhere, my mom called and turned my world upside down. I was in the middle of picking out centerpieces when my phone buzzed. Seeing Mom's name on the screen, I answered with a cheerful, "Hey, Mom, what's up?" Her voice was tight when she said, "Chloe, you need to cancel your engagement party. Your sister just got a promotion at work, and we're celebrating on the same day as your engagement party. You'll have to reschedule." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, I've been planning this for months. I can't just cancel it because Kira got a promotion. Why can't she have her party another day?" "Don't be selfish, Chloe," Mom snapped. "This is important for Kira. All the relatives will be at her party, so there's no point in you having yours." My blood was boiling. "No, Mom. I'm not canceling my engagement party. Kira can have her celebration another day." "How dare you?" Mom's voice rose to a shriek. "After everything we've done for you." I hung up. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down. I couldn't deal with this right now. As I sat there, staring at the half-finished centerpiece, memories started flooding back. All those times when Kira, my younger sister by 3 years, got preferential treatment. All those moments when I felt invisible in my own family. I remember when I was 16, and my parents completely forgot my birthday. It was only when Grandma called to wish me happy birthday that they remembered. They scrambled to get a store-bought cake and a gift card, but the damage was done. I couldn't help comparing it to Kira's 13th birthday just a few months earlier, a 3-day extravaganza with more guests than I could count and a cake that looked like it belonged in a fancy bakery window. My phone buzzed again. It was Tom. "Hey, babe," his warm voice came through. "How's the planning going?" I took a deep breath. "Tom, you won't believe what just happened." I spilled everything to him, my voice cracking as I recounted the conversation with my mom. "Wow," Tom said when I finished. That's messed up, Chloe. What are you going to do?" "I'm not canceling our engagement party," I said firmly. "I'm tired of always being pushed aside for Kira. This is our moment, Tom. I won't let them take it away from us." "I'm with you, 100%, Tom assured me. "Whatever you decide to do, I've got your back." I spent the next few days and a days, trying to focus on my engagement preparations while ignoring the constant buzzing of my phone. Mom kept calling, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I knew she'd just tried to guilt me into canceling again. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I decided to visit my Aunt Marge to personally invite her to my engagement party once again. Aunt Marge opened the door before I could even knock. "Chloe, dear." She pulled me into a tight hug that smelled of lavender and baked cookies. "Oh, I'm so glad you did. I've been meaning to call you, you know. Such a shame about the engagement, but these things happen, don't they?" I froze. "What?" Aunt Marge patted my arm sympathetically. "Your mother told us all about it, dear. How you and Tom had that awful fight and called everything off. Don't you worry, though. There's plenty of fish in the sea." My head was spinning. "Aunt Marge, what are you talking about? Tom and I didn't break up. We're still engaged." Now it was her turn to look confused. "But, your mother called everyone. She said the engagement was off and that we should all come to Kira's promotion party instead." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "She what?" Aunt Marge must have seen the shock on my face, because her expression quickly changed from confusion to concern. "Oh, dear. Chloe, what's going on?" I sank into her floral print couch, my legs suddenly feeling weak. "Aunt Marge, the engagement isn't off. Mom wanted me to cancel it because of Kira's party, but I refused. I can't believe she told everyone it was cancelled." Aunt Marge's face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "Now you listen to me, Chloe. You're not going to let them ruin this for you. We're going to fix this." She got up and grabbed her address book. "Start with the email. I'll help you draft it. Then we'll hit the phones. Between the two of us, we'll set everyone straight." For the next few hours, Aunt Marge and I worked tirelessly. We sent out emails, made phone calls, and even recorded a video message for the tech-savvy cousins. My voice grew hoarse from repeating the same explanation over and over. There's been a misunderstanding. Tom and I are still engaged. The party is still on. We really hope you can make it. By the time we finished, it was late into the night. Aunt Marge insisted I stay over, and I was too exhausted to argue. As I lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but think about how things had come to this. My own mother, lying to the whole family just to sabotage my engagement. It was a new low, even for her. The day of my engagement party arrived, and I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Despite all our efforts to correct my mother's lie, I had no idea how many people would actually show up. As I got dressed, my hands shook so badly I could barely fasten my necklace. The drive to the venue felt like it took forever. When Tom and I finally arrived, I hesitated before getting out of the car. What if no one's there, Tom? He leaned over and kissed my cheek. Then it'll be you and me, celebrating our love. And that's all that matters. His words gave me the courage to step out. We walked hand in hand towards the entrance. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears as we approached the doors. As they swung open, I held my breath. To my immense relief and joy, the hall was full of smiling faces. Almost all of our relatives had come, having seen through my mother's deception. The absence of my parents and Kira was noticeable, but it felt more like a relief than a disappointment. Aunt Marge rushed over, enveloping me in a hug. We wouldn't miss this for the world, dear, she whispered. Tom's parents were beaming, chatting animatedly with my cousins. Even my grandmother was there, looking elegant in her favorite pearls. As the evening progressed, I found myself relaxing and genuinely enjoying the celebration. The room was filled with laughter and love. At one point, my grandmother even cracked a slightly inappropriate joke, causing an eruption of applause and laughter. It was everything I had hoped for and more. The party was winding down when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Kira. Hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. I wasn't going to let her negativity taint this perfect evening. The next morning, I was jolted awake by my phone ringing. It was my mother. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but I knew I had to face this sooner or later. Hello? I answered, bracing myself. You ungrateful, nasty girl. My mother's shrill voice pierced through the phone. How dare you? I held the phone away from my ear as she ranted about how I had humiliated Kira. Apparently, only 3 distant, gossipy aunts had shown up to her promotion party. According to my mother, Kira had been in tears, devastated by the poor turnout. When she finally paused for breath, I spoke calmly. Mom, I'm sorry you're disappointed, but I've been planning my engagement for months. Kira's party was arranged last minute, and she knew it conflicted with mine. Before I could say anything else, she hung up on me. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling a mix of emotions. Part of me felt guilty, but a larger part felt liberated. For once, I had stood my ground, and it felt good. A few moments later, my phone pinged with a text from Kira. I'll make you pay for this humiliation. Just you wait. I sighed, hoping it was just empty words born from disappointment. But knowing Kira, I couldn't be sure. 2 weeks flew by in a whirlwind of wedding planning and blissful engagement happiness. Tom and I were on cloud 9, excitedly discussing venue options and color schemes. For a moment, I almost forgot about the family drama that had overshadowed our engagement party. But reality came crashing back one sunny afternoon when Tom's parents showed up at our apartment unannounced. The worried looks on their faces made my stomach drop. Chloe, Tom, we need to talk, Tom's father said gravely as we settled in the living room. Tom's mother reached out and patted my hand. Sweetie, we've been hearing, well, there's been talk that you've been unfaithful to Tom. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What? That's ridiculous. I would never. "We know, dear," Tom's mother quickly interjected. "We've known you for years." "We don't believe it for a second." Tom was on his feet, his face flushed with anger. "Who's spreading these lies?" "I didn't need to guess." "It's Kira, isn't it? My sister?" Tom's parents nodded solemnly. "We thought as much," his father said. "We wanted to come to you directly rather than let these rumors fester." As they explained what they'd heard, outlandish stories of me supposedly cheating on Tom with multiple partners, I felt a mixture of rage and despair. Kira had taken her vendetta to a whole new level. After reassuring Tom's parents and seeing them out, I collapsed onto the couch, my head in my hands. "I can't believe she'd stoop this low," I muttered. Tom sat beside me, pulling me into a comforting embrace. "We'll get through this, Chloe. Nobody who really knows you will believe these lies." I wanted to believe him, but a nagging fear persisted. How far would Kira go? And how much damage could she do before we shut this down? As if on cue, my phone rang. It was my grandmother. "Chloe, darling," her warm voice came through the speaker. "I've been hearing about this nonsense with your sister. I was hoping you could clear things up for me." I took a deep breath and explained everything: the engagement party drama, Kira's threats, and now these vicious rumors. By the end, I was fighting back tears. "Oh, my sweet girl," Grandma said softly. "I had no idea things had gotten so bad between you two. You know, I think it's time we tried to mend these fences. Family shouldn't be at war like this." I bit my lip, conflicted. Part of me wanted to write off Kira and my parents entirely, but I knew how much family meant to my grandmother. "I don't know, Grandma. After everything they've done." "Just think about it," she urged. "Maybe we could arrange a family dinner. Clear the air." To appease her, I agreed to consider it. But as I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling that any attempt at reconciliation would be futile. After days of internal struggle and countless conversations with Tom, I decided to take my grandmother's advice. With a heart full of trepidation, I made my way to my parents' house. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell, my pulse racing. Mom answered, her face a mask of surprise and suspicion. "What are you doing here?" "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I was hoping we could talk. All of us." She hesitated for a moment before reluctantly stepping aside to let me in. Dad and Kira were in the living room, their expressions mirroring Mom's. "Look," I began, my hands slightly shaking, "I know things have been difficult lately. But I want to try and make things right." Kira scoffed, but I pressed on. "I had an idea. Kira, your promotion is a big deal, and it deserves to be celebrated properly. So, I'd like to throw you another party, a real celebration with all the trimmings. I'll even help organize it. What do you say?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, Kira's face contorted with fury. "Are you kidding me?" she spat. "I don't need your handouts, Chloe. You think you can just waltz in here and play the bigger person?" "Kira, I'm just trying to." "No," she cut me off. "You don't get it, do you? I wanted my party on your engagement day for a reason. I wanted the guests to come to me, not you." Her words hit me like a slap. I turned to my parents, hoping for some support, but their faces were hard and unyielding. "Kira's right," Mom said coldly. "You've always been so selfish, Chloe. Always thinking about yourself." I stood there, stunned by their united front against me. It was like I was that overlooked child again, always playing second fiddle to Kira's wants and needs. Without another word, I turned and left, the sound of Kira's angry muttering following me out the door. Discouraged but not surprised, I went to my grandmother's house. She greeted me with a warm hug and a hopeful smile. "How did it go, dear?" she asked, ushering me inside. Instead of explaining, I pulled out my phone. "I think it's better if you hear it yourself." I had made the last-minute decision to record the conversation, a part of me knowing it might come to this. As I pressed play, the bitter words filled the room once again. As the recording played, I watched my grandmother's expression change. The hope in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a growing look of disappointment and sadness. When it ended, she sat in silence for a moment, then reached out and took my hand. "Oh, Chloe," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea it was this bad. I owe you an apology. Can you forgive me?" "Of course," I said, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. At least someone in my family could see the truth. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of angry text messages from my parents. Confused and still half asleep, I scrolled through them, my heart sinking with each word. "How dare you record us? I can't believe you'd stoop so low. You've always been a snitch, Chloe." It didn't take long to piece together what had happened. I called Grandma, and she confirmed my suspicions. She'd confronted my parents about the recording, unable to keep silent after hearing their cruel words. "I'm sorry, dear," Grandma said, her voice heavy with regret. "I just couldn't stand by and let them treat you like that. I told them their favoritism was unacceptable and that their bullying of you had gone too far." "Thanks for standing up for me, Grandma," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I think this might be the last straw." As I hung up, I made a decision. It was time to distance myself from my toxic family. No more olive branches, no more attempts at reconciliation. I needed to protect myself and my future with Tom. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a new wave of attacks. Over the next few weeks, Kira's vindictiveness reached new heights. It started with whispers at work. Colleagues began giving me strange looks, and I overheard hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when I approached. Finally, my friend and coworker, Sarah, pulled me aside. "Chloe, I don't know how to say this, but there are rumors going around that you have a drinking problem. People are saying they've seen you drunk at work." I was floored. "What? That's ridiculous. I barely drink at all, let alone at work." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "I know, that's why I wanted to tell you. I think someone's trying to sabotage you." I knew exactly who that someone was. But Kira didn't stop there. My social media accounts were flooded with anonymous, abusive messages. Comments calling me a cheater, a liar, a horrible person. I spent hours blocking accounts and deleting comments, but they kept coming. The final straw came when Tom received a message from an unknown number. He showed it to me, his face a mix of anger and concern. "Thought you should know the truth about your fiancé," the message read, followed by a long list of fabricated stories about my supposed infidelities. "It's Kira, isn't it?" Tom asked, his jaw clenched. I nodded, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over me. She's really outdone herself this time. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I couldn't help but wonder how we'd gotten here. How had my relationship with my sister deteriorated to this point? And more importantly, how are we going to put an end to this nightmare? As the weeks passed, I tried my best to focus on my work and wedding planning, pushing thoughts of Kira and her vindictive campaign to the back of my mind. Then, out of the blue, I received a call from an old family friend who worked at Kira's company. "Chloe, I thought you should know," she said, her voice low as if she was sharing a secret. "There's been some drama at the office involving your sister." I held my breath, unsure whether to brace for more bad news or allow myself to hope. "Kira's been, well, she's been acting erratically. Her work's been suffering, and people have noticed. She received an official reprimand from her superiors, and, Chloe, she's been demoted." The irony wasn't lost on me. The very promotion that had sparked this whole ordeal was now gone, undone by Kira's own obsessive behavior. "Thank you for letting me know," I said, my mind reeling. After hanging up, I sat in silence for a long while, processing the news. Part of me wanted to feel triumphant, but mostly I just felt a profound sense of relief. Maybe now, finally, this nightmare would end. With renewed energy, we threw ourselves into wedding planning. We found a beautiful venue, a rustic barn set against rolling hills that perfectly captured the warm, intimate feeling we wanted for our big day. Choosing our wedding party was a joy. My best friend Sarah, who had stood by me through all the workplace drama, was an easy choice for maid of honor. Tom's brother would be his best man, and we rounded out the party with friends who had supported us through thick and thin. As we sat down to write out invitations, I felt a pang as I realized I'd be leaving out some names. My parents, Kira. It felt strange, almost wrong, not to include them. But as I thought back on the past few months, the lies, the sabotage, the constant stress, I knew it was the right decision. Instead, we filled our guest list with people who had truly been there for us: my grandmother, who had finally seen the truth, Aunt Marge, who had helped save our engagement party, colleagues who had stood by me despite the rumors, friends who had offered shoulders to cry on and ears to listen. As I sealed the last invitation, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This wedding wasn't just a celebration of our love, it was a new beginning, a chance to surround ourselves with genuine love and support. The day of our wedding finally arrived, and despite all the drama leading up to it, I woke up feeling nothing but excitement and joy. The venue looked perfect, with wildflowers decorating every surface and soft fairy lights twinkling everywhere. As I slipped into my wedding dress, surrounded by my bridesmaids, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The ceremony was everything we'd dreamed of: intimate, heartfelt, and filled with love. As Tom and I exchanged vows, I looked out at the faces of our guests, all people who truly cared for us and had supported us through thick and thin. My grandmother sat in the front row, tears of joy streaming down her face. However, our perfect day wasn't without its drama. Just as we were about to cut the cake at the reception, there was a commotion near the entrance. I saw the security guards we'd hired wrestling someone to the ground, and my heart sank as I recognized the struggling figure. Kira. Tom squeezed my hand as we watched the guards escort my sister away. One of them approached us, looking apologetic. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but we caught this woman trying to sneak in," he explained. "She had a can of spray paint with her. We think she was planning to, well." I closed my eyes, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness wash over me. Even on my wedding day, Kira couldn't let go of her vendetta. "Do you want us to call the police?" the guard asked. For a moment, I was tempted. After everything Kira had put us through, it would be so easy to press charges, to finally make her face consequences for her actions. But as I looked around at our beautiful wedding, at Tom's concerned face, at all our loved ones watching anxiously, I made a decision. "No," I said finally. "No police. Just, make sure she leaves the premises." That evening, after the last guest had left and Tom and I were finally alone, I composed a message on my phone. I sent it to my parents and Kira. "I hope you understand now that I'm serious about cutting ties. If anything like this ever happens again, I won't hesitate to go to the police and press charges for harassment, emotional abuse, and defamation. Please respect my wishes and leave me and my new family alone." I hit send, then turned off my phone. As Tom held me close, I felt like I could finally breathe freely. The weeks and months that followed were blissfully quiet. True to my word, I heard nothing from my parents or Kira. It was strange at first, like a phantom limb, but as time passed, I found myself relaxing into my new life. My relationships with the family members who had stood by me grew stronger. Sunday dinners at Grandma's became a cherished tradition, filled with laughter and love. Aunt Marge became like a second mother to me, always ready with advice or just a listening ear. One sunny afternoon, about a year after our wedding, Tom and I were having a picnic in the park when he asked, "Do you ever regret cutting ties with your parents and Kira?" I thought about it for a moment, watching a family play frisbee nearby. "Sometimes I'm sad about what could have been," I admitted. "But no, I don't regret it. We've built a beautiful life, surrounded by people who truly care about us. That's what family should be." I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain: whatever came our way, we'd face it together, surrounded by the family we'd chosen. And that was more than enough. I'm Sarah, 32 years old, and up until a few weeks ago, I thought I had my life pretty much figured out. I've been working as a translator for this big company for the past 5 years. I rent a small apartment in the city, nothing fancy, but it's mine, you know? On weekends, I hit up dance classes. It's my thing, helps me unwind after a week of staring at computer screens and deciphering foreign languages. Friends? Yeah, I've got a few. We grab drinks sometimes, catch a movie here and there. It's not much, but it's enough for me. Family, though? That's where things get complicated. See, I've got a younger sister, Emma. She's always been the golden child, Mom's favorite. Dad? He just went along with whatever Mom wanted. It's been like that for as long as I can remember. As we grew older, nothing changed. Emma got the attention, the praise, the support. Me? I was just there. An afterthought. So, I did what any self-respecting afterthought would do, I distanced myself. Calls became less frequent, visits even rarer. It was easier that way, less painful. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. It was Mom. Sarah, it's your mother. Your father wants to see you. Can you come over this weekend? I nearly dropped my phone. Dad wanted to see me? That was new. Sure. I guess I can make it. Everything okay? Just come, Sarah. Saturday at 2. Don't be late. So, that Saturday, I found myself standing outside my parents' fancy house. It was a far cry from my rented apartment, that's for sure. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Mom answered, looking me up and down like she was appraising a piece of furniture. You're here. Come in. I stepped inside, and there they all were. Dad, looking frail and tired in his armchair. Emma, perfect as always, perched on the couch next to her husband, Richard. I'd only met him a handful of times. He was older than Emma, always busy with work or whatever it was rich guys did. Hey, everyone, I said, trying to sound casual. What's going on? Dad looked up at me, his eyes sad but determined. Sarah, sit down. We need to talk. I sat down, my heart racing. Dad looked awful, worse than I'd ever seen him. His once strong frame seemed to have shrunk, and his face was pale and drawn. Sarah, he began, his voice weak but steady, I'm terminally ill, sweetheart. The doctors, they don't think I have much time left. No, I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. There must be something they can do. Dad shook his head slowly. I've explored every option, Sarah. It's time I put my affairs in order. I noticed Mom and Emma exchange a glance. There was something in their eyes I couldn't quite read. Dad continued, that's why I've called you all here today. I want to discuss my will. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. I could feel the tension, thick and suffocating. I've given this a lot of thought, Dad said, his gaze moving from Mom to Emma, then settling on me. Your mother will get the apartment in the city. Emma, you'll inherit this house. Emma nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. And Sarah, Dad paused, his eyes locking with mine. I've decided to leave you my savings. All $550,000 of it. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then all hell broke loose. What? Mom shrieked, her face contorting with rage. You can't be serious, John. Emma jumped to her feet. Dad, that's not fair. Sarah's barely even part of this family anymore. Dad's fist came down on the arm of his chair with surprising force. Enough, he roared, his illness momentarily forgotten. This is my decision, and it's final. I've been under your influence for far too long, Margaret. I've neglected Sarah because of you, because of your obsession with Emma. No more. He turned to me, his eyes softening. Sarah, I'm so sorry. Can you ever forgive me? Without hesitation, I moved to him, wrapping my arms around his frail body. Of course, Dad. Of course I forgive you. He hugged me back, his grip weak but filled with love. After a moment, he pulled away, exhaustion etched on his face. I'm tired now. I need to rest. As Dad retreated to his room, I found myself facing the furious glares of my mother and sister. You, Mom hissed, her voice dripping with venom. You need to refuse the money. It should go to Emma. I stood my ground, anger bubbling up inside me. No, it's Dad's decision, and I'm respecting it. Emma stepped closer, her eyes narrowed. You'll regret this, Sarah. Mark my words. As I left the house, Emma's taunts followed me. Look at you, all alone. No one wants you. I've got a rich, loving husband. What do you have? Richard's laughter joined hers, the sound grating on my nerves as I walked to my car. The next 2 weeks were hell. Every day, without fail, my phone would buzz with messages from Mom and Emma. They were relentless, demanding I give up the inheritance. I ignored them all. I threw myself into work, trying to drown out their voices with the clatter of my keyboard. Then, on a gray Tuesday morning, the call came. Dad was gone. I felt numb as I drove to the funeral. The service was a blur of black clothes and somber faces. Mom and Emma put on quite a show, sobbing dramatically and clinging to each other. I stood apart, my grief a quiet, hollow thing in my chest. After the service, we all gathered at the house. Emma made a big deal about the money she'd withdrawn for the funeral expenses, waving her purse around like a flag. I've got it all here, she announced to anyone who'd listen. Thousands of dollars. It's the least I could do for Daddy. As the last of the guests trickled out, I started gathering my things. That's when all hell broke loose. Emma's shriek cut through the somber atmosphere like a knife. My money, it's gone. Someone's stolen it. I froze, a chill running down my spine. Something about this felt wrong. Mom's eyes locked onto me, cold and accusing. It must have been someone who was here the whole time, she said, her voice dripping with insinuation. Empty your purse, Sarah, now. I stood my ground, anger bubbling up inside me. No, this is ridiculous. I haven't taken anything. Then you won't mind proving it, Emma sneered. Before I could respond, Richard was on the phone. Yes, police? We'd like to report a theft. My heart pounded as we waited for the police to arrive. This couldn't be happening. Not today, of all days. The officers were professional, but firm. Ma'am, we're going to need to check your bag, one of them said. Trapped, I handed over my purse. The officer opened it, reached inside, and pulled out a wad of cash and Emma's credit cards. The room exploded into chaos. Mom and Emma hurled accusations and insults, their voices rising to a fever pitch. I stood there, shell-shocked, trying to make sense of what was happening. I didn't do this, I stammered. I swear, I don't know how those got there. But my protests fell on deaf ears. At the police station, I sat in a cold, sterile room, my mind reeling. Then, to my surprise, Mom walked in. For a fleeting moment, I thought she might have come to help me. I should have known better. She leaned in close, her voice a venomous whisper. Give up the inheritance, Sarah. Do it, or you'll rot in jail. Everyone will know you as the rat who steals from her own family. Is that what you want? I felt something snap inside me. Years of neglect, of being the family outcast, of taking their abuse, it all came to a head in that moment. No, I hissed back. No, I won't give it up. Do your worst. Mom's face twisted with fury. Fine. Enjoy prison, you ungrateful trash. She stormed out, leaving me alone with my anger and a newfound determination. I managed to post bail and get out of that hellhole, but my troubles were far from over. As I stumbled into my apartment, exhausted and angry, my phone rang. It was my boss, Mark. Sarah, we need to talk, he said, his voice tense. I received a call today. Someone told me about the theft accusations against you. I felt the blood drain from my face. Mark, I swear I didn't. I believe you, Sarah, he cut in. But we can't have this kind of scandal at the office. Not right now. I'm putting you on unpaid leave until this blows over. The line went dead, and with it, my last shred of composure. I sank to the floor, hot tears streaming down my face. I cried until I had no tears left, then something changed inside me. The sadness gave way to a cold, hard fury. With shaking hands, I pulled out my laptop and navigated to Emma's Facebook page. There, staring back at me, was post after post of luxury cars. Which one should I get, she'd written, just days before Dad's death. The timestamp mocked me, they'd planned this all along, even before Dad was gone. That was it. The final straw. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd never thought I'd use. Jackson Investigations, a gruff voice answered. I need your help, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I need dirt on my sister and mother. They've set me up, and I'm going to prove it. The private investigator, a man named Mike, listened to my story without comment. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. Family drama, huh? Those are always the nastiest. I'll see what I can dig up. For 2 weeks, I waited. Finally, Mike called back. I've got good news and bad news, he said. Bad news is, your mom and sister are careful. They haven't discussed the inheritance or the theft where anyone could overhear. My heart sank. And the good news? I could almost hear his grin through the phone. Your sister's been a bad girl. I've got solid evidence she's cheating on that rich husband of hers. The next morning, I sent a carefully worded message to Richard, my sister's husband. Attached was a photo of Emma entering a hotel with a young, handsome man who definitely wasn't Richard. Interested in what happened next? I wrote. Meet me at Café Noir at 2 p.m. Richard showed up right on time, his face a mask of barely contained rage. I laid out everything I had, photos, videos, even recordings of Emma laughing about Richard's age and how she was only with him for his money. She said I'm boring in bed, Richard growled, his knuckles white as he gripped his coffee cup. That she's disgusted by me. I nodded sympathetically. I'm sorry, Richard. You deserve to know the truth. He looked up at me, his eyes hard. What do you want from me? Why show me this? I leaned in close. I want revenge, Richard. On Emma, on my mother. They set me up, tried to frame me for theft. I need your help to prove it. The next few days felt like an eternity. I paced my apartment, checking my phone obsessively, waiting for word from Richard. Finally, on the 4th day, my phone buzzed with a message. I've got what you need. Meet me. My heart raced as I drove to our agreed meeting spot, a quiet park on the outskirts of town. Richard was already there, looking grim but satisfied. Listen to this, he said, handing me a small USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop, and suddenly, I heard my mother's voice, clear as day. I can't believe how well it worked, she cackled. You should have seen Sarah's face when they found the money in her purse. Emma's laughter joined in. It was priceless. She actually thought she could get away with Dad's money. As if. Now she'll have to give up the inheritance, Mom said smugly. She can't risk going to jail. I felt a mix of emotions wash over me, vindication, anger, and a fierce determination. This is perfect, I told Richard. Thank you. He nodded, his face hard. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. According to our prenup, if Emma cheats, she gets nothing. In fact, she'll owe me. The day of the will reading arrived faster than I expected. As I walked into the notary's office, I saw them all there, Mom, Emma, and Richard. Mom and Emma wore matching smug expressions, clearly expecting me to cave and give up my inheritance. The notary cleared his throat, ready to begin, but I held up a hand. Before we start, I have something to say. Mom and Emma exchanged gleeful glances, probably thinking I was about to renounce my claim. Oh, how wrong they were. I know what you did, I said, my voice steady. I know you set me up, planted that money in my purse. And I can prove it. Before they could react, I pressed play on the recording. Their own voices filled the room, confessing to their scheme. Mom and Emma's faces drained of color. How did you get that? Emma stuttered. That's when Richard stood up. I recorded it, he said, his voice cold. I heard everything. Emma's eyes widened in panic. Richard, I don't understand why you did this. He cut her off by tossing a manila envelope on the table. Outspilled photos of Emma with her lover. Save it, he spat. I know all about your affair too. I'm filing for divorce, and according to our prenup, you don't get a cent. In fact, you'll be paying me. The room erupted into chaos. Mom and Emma started shouting, tears streaming down their faces. But their cries were cut short by a new voice. Ladies, you're under arrest. We all turned to see two police officers entering the room. I'd called them earlier, providing them with the evidence of the false accusation and blackmail attempt. As the officers led Mom and Emma away in handcuffs, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. I'd won. The notary, who had watched the whole scene unfold with wide eyes, cleared his throat again. Well, shall we proceed with the reading of the will? I nodded, finally ready to honor my father's last wishes. As the notary read out the details, confirming my inheritance, I couldn't help but think of Dad. I hope you're proud of me, I thought. I didn't let them push me around anymore. The aftermath of that day in the notary's office was a whirlwind. True to my expectations, the lawsuit against Mom and Emma was a slam dunk. With the recorded evidence and the police report, their guilt was indisputable. The judge didn't go easy on them. Attempting to frame your own daughter and sister, he said, his voice dripping with disgust. I've seen a lot in this courtroom, but this takes the cake. The verdict came down hard. Mom and Emma were ordered to pay a massive fine, directly to me. The amount was so large, I almost felt dizzy when I heard it. Mom's face turned ashen when she realized what this meant. But I'll have to sell the apartment, she stammered. The judge showed no mercy. Perhaps you should have thought of that before engaging in criminal behavior, Mrs. Thompson. Emma didn't fare any better. With the divorce proceedings in full swing, she was forced to sell the house Dad had left her. Most of that money went to Richard as per their prenup, but a significant chunk came to me as part of the court-ordered compensation. I watched from a distance as their lives unraveled. The apartment I'd grown up in, the house where we'd had that fateful meeting about Dad's will, both sold to strangers. Mom and Emma were left with almost nothing. As for me, life was looking up. With Dad's inheritance and the lawsuit money, I was suddenly in a very comfortable financial position. The first thing I did was quit my translation job. As understanding as Mark had been, the whole experience had left a bad taste in my mouth. Instead, I decided to invest in myself. I'd always had a passion for languages, beyond just translating them. With my newfound resources, I enrolled in a prestigious linguistics program. It was challenging, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. I also bought myself a beautiful apartment in the heart of the city. The rest of the money, I invested wisely. I worked with a financial advisor to set up a portfolio that would provide me with a steady income. It wasn't about being rich, it was about having the freedom to live life on my own terms. Months passed, and slowly, the dust began to settle. I heard through the grapevine that Mom had moved to a small rental on the outskirts of town. Emma, last I knew, was crashing on a friend's couch, her dreams of luxury cars and easy living shattered. Richard, true to his word, had divorced Emma and left her with nothing. He sent me a brief email thanking me for opening his eyes. I'm traveling the world now, he wrote. Living the life I always wanted, without dead weight holding me back. I owe you one. As for me, I was thriving. My studies were going well, I'd made new friends who appreciated me for who I was, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly independent. A few months flew by in a whirlwind of activity. With my newfound financial stability and a burning desire to make something of myself, I decided to take the plunge and open my own language school. It felt right, combining my passion for linguistics with my experience as a translator. Thompson Language Academy, I mused, tracing the words on the freshly painted sign. It had a nice ring to it. Recruiting teachers was easier than I'd expected. There were plenty of talented linguists out there looking for an opportunity, and soon I had a solid team teaching everything from French to Mandarin, catering to both adults and kids. One evening, as I was locking up the school, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Richard. "Hey Sarah, I'm back in town. Heard about your new school. Fancy celebrating your success over a glass of wine?" I hesitated for a moment. Richard and I had parted on good terms after the whole inheritance debacle, but we'd never been close. Still, I owed him for helping me expose Emma and Mom's scheme. "Sure," I texted back. "My place, 8 p.m.? That night, Richard showed up at my door with a bottle of expensive red wine and a warm smile. We settled on the couch, glasses in hand, and started chatting. As the wine flowed, so did the conversation. Richard told me about his travels, his eyes lighting up as he described the places he'd seen and the people he'd met. I found myself opening up too, telling him about the challenges and joys of starting my own business. It felt nice. As the night wore on and the wine bottle emptied, I realized I was seeing a whole new side of Richard. I'm not sure who made the first move. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was the newfound connection, or maybe it was just the culmination of all the changes in our lives. But suddenly, we were kissing. When I woke up the next morning, I found Richard already awake, watching me with a mix of affection and uncertainty. "Sarah," he began, his voice serious. "I need to be honest with you. I know I wasn't the best person before. I underestimated you, laughed at you along with Emma. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." I listened, my heart pounding. Where was this going? He took a deep breath. "But last night, it made me realize something. You're an incredible woman, Sarah. I'd like a chance to start over, to do things right this time. Would you consider dating me?" I stared at him, my mind whirling. Date Richard? My sister's ex-husband? It was crazy, completely insane. And yet, yes, I heard myself say. Let's give it a shot. Richard's face lit up, and as he leaned in to kiss me, I couldn't help but laugh to myself. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be dating my sister's ex-husband, I'd have thought they were nuts. But here I was, embarking on yet another unexpected journey. Just when I thought things were settling into a comfortable rhythm with the language school thriving and my relationship with Richard blossoming, the past came knocking, literally. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I heard angry pounding on my front door. I opened it to find Emma, her face contorted with rage. "You backstabbing trash," she screamed, pushing past me into the apartment. "I know about you and Richard. You've always wanted to take him from me, haven't you? You've always been jealous of what I had." I felt my own anger rising. "That's ridiculous, Emma. Richard left you because you cheated on him, remember? This has nothing to do with—" "Oh, please," she interrupted, her voice dripping with venom. "As if he'd stay with you. There's nothing special about you, Sarah. You're not beautiful, not like me. He'll leave you just like everyone else does." Her words stung, hitting old insecurities I thought I'd left behind. But I wasn't that pushover anymore. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Get out of my home and stay out of my life. We're done, Emma. For good." She glared at me for a long moment before storming out, slamming the door behind her. I sank onto the couch, suddenly feeling ill. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, trying to shake off the nausea and unease. But as the nausea persisted into the next day, a different kind of unease settled over me. On a hunch, I ran down to the pharmacy and bought a pregnancy test. Positive. I was pregnant. My mind reeled. A baby? Now? I needed to tell Richard. This affected him too, after all. I braced myself for his reaction, prepared for anything from joy to anger to a hasty retreat. When I broke the news, Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he wrapped me in a tight hug and sighed dramatically. "Richard?" I asked, confused by his reaction. He pulled back, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Well, Sarah, I'm afraid you're going to regret this." I stared at him, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" His serious expression cracked, replaced by a wide grin. "Because now you're stuck with me for years. Will you marry me?" For the second time in as many days, I was stunned speechless. But this time, joy bubbled up inside me, replacing the earlier distress. "Yes," I laughed, happy tears spilling down my cheeks. "Yes, I'll marry you." As we kissed, celebrating our engagement and the new life growing inside me, I marveled at how far I'd come. From the neglected daughter to a successful business owner, from a victim of my family's schemes to a woman creating her own family. Now, as I plan our wedding, I know there will be two conspicuous absences. Mom and Emma won't be invited. It's a bittersweet decision, but I know it's the right one. I'm building a new life, one filled with love, respect, and happiness. There's no room for their toxicity anymore.